Yeah, I guess we will need to find our yeah. We just refresh it. Yeah. We also need to find this on this screen. Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
You need to see. It's not, I'm sorry, but it's not possible to see.
Okay, okay, no problem.
So sorry.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much for the invitation. So, this is a lecture about the two things. The Nålat Revidemi, which is the decolonization, and it is Kingatet Ormuskola, which is the re-civilization part. And we are going to, I'm very happy to be here with you. And I'm a person with two legs. The one leg is that I'm a legal professional, so I work at the Faculty of Law at Tromsø University. And the other leg is that I also perform and am a practicing artist. So when we ask this question about indigenous epistemologies, then coming from law, we could ask, what part can law have in indigenous people's struggles for their right to a past, right to a present, and right to a future? The characteristic thing about legal norms is that they often define the floor, the minimum standards that can be, and that legal institutions are assumed to operate according to evidential facts and legal norms, and that legal procedures are assumed to operate according to procedural principles regardless of political atmosphere. But if we look at the record of law, then it is, seems to be a universal observation that it's a pretty poor performance over time to protect indigenous rights. So then we try to ask what part can art have in indigenous people's struggles for a right to a past, right to a present, and right to a future. And the thing is with art is that it can operate in a wider range than law. It has a discourse that is not as limited as the law is. So I want to invite you to my kitchen here, and it is this project that started by these mountains here. is this lake, and I'm standing here, and here is a mountain, and this mountain answers in a way. And then there is a second mountain here that gives the second answer. And then there is a bowl-formed mountain a little further away that gives this tone. So this was the birth of a project that I had together with Chris Watson, the sound artist from England. And we made the project that is called Joiking with the Winged Ones. That was made practically that I was 200 meters from the microphone. I had been rehearsing up my voice, so I should have enough energy that the mountain should be able to answer. So I was there, and Chris was 200 meters from me and the mic, Chris and the mic was there, and then there were a lot of birds between us, so they were our studio musicians. And we made this project. And this project was, I always have had this companion with me, the wolf, and it was so funny that the wolf also came to the opening. I was so happy for that. When we are looking at how art could do with the right to a past, right to a presence, a right to a future, we could then look at the tradition we are in, the situation that we are at, and the imagination that can lead us. If we then, first we have to address this very difficult question that we also touched upon earlier in the conversation, that is art its own master, or is art a servant for somebody else? And that is one of the big mysteries, if art is the one who cleans the legs of others. And what are the freedoms of art? Can I ecstaticize you as much as I want? Or can I make caricatures of you as extreme as I want, as an artist? Or we could ask from a different perspective this question, that if you have any purpose, like with us asking this question, we could then ask, are you really an artist, or are you just a political activist making illustrative political statements? And this question can hang in the air. We can then step to tradition. What tradition do we come from? So this project was inspired by three traditions: the Sami tradition, the Norwegian tradition, and the European tradition. And the inspiration from the Sami tradition was that in our oral tradition we have learned the art of joiking from the underground people called Gofichter. So they came up with joiking, and we even today say, if we meet a very skilled joiker, we say that this joiker joiks like an underground. It's a contrast to that singing like an angel and joiking like an underground. So it's a big thank you to the people of the underground that this project The second is the Norwegian tradition, because in the Norwegian tradition they also had the earth that had a soul, and everything that has a soul you would need an ethic and a morality to relate to. So in the Norwegian tradition, the elves and the underground people were present, but when Norway started to modernize itself, then somehow the earth became an object. And with an object you can you don't need to have the normative borders. You only need to have goal-oriented borders. For example, if you want to dig out the gold, you don't need to ask the underground people, but you need to ask the calculative questions. How expensive will that be, and how much effort will it take, and so on. So in the Norwegian tradition we have the song Nisser og dverge bygger I berget, men vi skal mine dem alle her ut. Mens vi synger muntre I klynger, sprenger vi berget I lufta med krutt. And it is about the fairies and elves. The poem is that fairies and elves are living in the mountains, but we shall come with explosives and we shall blow them out of the mountains, and we will take all the riches with us. And I guess this song is twofold. It marks a paradigm shift that is very dramatic when the earth lost its soul. So, and I'm asking with the project here, the Norwegian fairies and elves, are you still okay? We need you here to come and police the earth. And the third inspiration, it comes from the European tradition with Echo and Narcissus, that I invite Echo who quote the eternal life, but didn't get to experience love, since Narcissus only cared about himself. So that is the right to a past, that it's sort of threefold. And when we look at the present situation, the Sami situation is that we have a very scattered culture. Loss of language is a huge problem. Loss of land rights is a huge problem. And we have, in common with many other indigenous peoples, we have high suicide rates. We have a lot of problems that we deal with as Samis. And the Norwegian situation is that, imagine to be an elephant in a crystal shop, and every time you move, something breaks, and you don't know what to do about that. That is the Norwegian situation, because the population of Norway is kept ignorant about the Sami culture, the Sami history. So, so they are in this situation of ignorance, and it is a very shameful situation, but they don't know what to do about that. Every judge that is appointed, a Norwegian judge, getting a Sami case that is litigated, what to do, or a newly appointed minister or any official, what to do with the Samis. And the European situation is that they are even more ignorant about that. So if we then turn to the right to a future, because that is basically whether you can be in the space of imagination. And the thing is oftentimes that crisis can be not the mother, but what do you call this person who helps somebody?
Midwife.
The midwife, yeah, the midwife of imagination. Crisis is oftentimes the midwife. So the big question that we need in the Sami society to ask is that how can we Samis deal with cultural trauma in innovative ways? Is it possible to be innovative with something as bad as traumas? I think I'm an optimist. I think that we can do that, but we will need to start from one place to identify the different traumas that are, and to find out ways that different traumas would be dealt with. In the Norwegian question is that how can the Norwegians deal with historical and collective responsibilities in innovative ways? Because the legal tradition and the moral tradition is oftentimes that responsibility is actual, that something that happened yesterday or some time ago. But responsibility for things that have been in the past or a longer time ago, we do not deal with. And that is due to the thing that we often have the perception of a culture being a human being to have the same lifespan as, for example, a human becomes 80 years, then 20 years become a long time, 40 years become a long time. But if one perceives time as a people, then long time and historical responsibility gets in a totally new light. And that also applies to collective responsibility. That even if it wasn't me who did that, or our people who did that, then as members of a civil society we would have those types of responsibilities to deal with. And then the last question and the hardest question is how Europe and thereby the global art scene could deal with the ignorance in innovative ways. And that question we can let be hanging there, because the phenomenon of ignorance is a very special phenomenon, because you can be ignorant about your ignorance. So you have to. Ignorance is almost like we were discussing about transparency. That it's a kind of concept that will always move. So when you know that you are ignorant, then you have the first step, but you will always meet your ignorance no matter how much of a black belt you become. Thank you for sitting still.